issue of the economy in the election. Patty.
Thanks, Lauren. Welcome back to Washington. We're taking a moment here to take a closer look at the issues that are driving this election. Now we want to talk about the economy, as you mentioned. When Republicans passed their tax reform bill, many politicians thought they would be the key issue in the midterms, that the voters would reward them for their effort. That hasn't happened, as the vast majority of people say they believe the tax cuts favor the wealthy and corporations more than regular people. So to talk about the economy, we're going to be joined with John Fredericks. He is the Trump campaign chair for the state of Virginia. Matt Morrison is the executive director of Working America. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us to have this discussion.
Thanks,
John,
Patty.
I want to start with you. The tax cut bill, hugely unpopular, adding enormous amounts of money to the debt. And your guy, Trump, said when he's in office, there's going to be no debt. It's going to be more than $1 trillion in the next year. So how do you square that with your support for him?
Well, the debt will go down as wages expand, jobs expand, people get into the job market, companies open up, small businesses expanding like never before. So every time somebody enters the job market, they're paying taxes. Every time somebody opens up a new company, they're paying taxes. So the tax revenue base is going to expand. As far as the tax cuts...
It isn't. The tax revenue base
Well,
is
there's always
plummeting.
a lag, Patty. There's an economic lag behind it. And remember, the tax cuts, the only benefit right now, the only real benefit of the tax cuts is paychecks with holding. That's it. The tax cuts don't really hit until April of 2018. That's when people actually see them. So there's always a 12-month lag behind the tax cut and when the revenues
That's for
increase.
individuals. Corporations already know what their taxes are. But Matt, I want to ask you about this.
Yeah, but they're not paying. They're still paying the same rate. And the reason why, Patty, business is expanding is because corporations are planning on the tax reductions. They're buying equipment, they're buying machinery, they're capital investing, they're
doing stock buybacks.
people.
The vast majority of the tax cut went to stock buybacks.
They're hiring people. Well, if I didn't
John,
have a
can I just
job and
jump
then I
in
have a
just for a
job,
second?
to say that that tax cut didn't benefit me, that's a false argument.
Matt, I want to ask you about that because
Yeah.
the president touted this more than 3% in job growth or income growth, the longest in decades and decades, but that didn't factor in inflation.
Yeah.
And the cost of everything in this country is going up pretty dramatically. The companies have now started to put into their pricing the trade war. So if you look at that with inflation, wage growth is less than 1%. So when do people start punishing the president and the Republicans for that?
Oh, I'd say tonight. You know, here's the difference in what's happening in the real economy versus what John's talking about. Look at where the economy is growing. Wage growth is up, what, 30% in the last 4 years in San Francisco and Boston. But look at Pittsburgh, look at Cleveland. It's up around 10% over that same time period. It's ironic that the Trump tax cuts, his economic agenda, has done a whole lot for blue state America, where he's not picking up any votes and his party sure isn't, and it hasn't shown up in red state America and in Trump country.
Does that affect his core supporters, though? At his rallies, they say everything's great. Look at the economy.
Well, you know, Donald Trump got elected because Republicans made up 90% of his vote, and another 10% of swing voters said, you know what, I've had enough of stagnation and not actually seeing economic growth and opportunity for the last 45 years. When you take into account that there's separate populations of people, those folks who care about health care and the fact that the health care insurance or health care inflation is going up, what, 6%, so it's eating up all of the economic growth, the income growth, those are the folks that are swinging back towards Democrats in places like Iowa 1.
John, I want to ask you about this trade war that the president's launched with China. China was pretty strategic in picking exactly the areas where Trump's base is going to hurt by their... If he gets trounced tonight, which I know you're going to tell me it's not going to happen, everything's rosy.
Well, it isn't going to happen, but go ahead, Pat.
Well, we shall see in just a matter of hours. But if he does get trounced, and if the farmers who can't sell their soybeans, if the manufacturing people have been laid off because the aluminum is so much more expensive now, if they don't show up, if they send him a message, does he back down?
No. First of all, 4.5 million jobs have been created since this president took office. So to say, well, working people, they haven't been affected. 4.5 million of them didn't have a job, and now they have a job. That's a pretty good number. Those people are turning out today. That's why we feel pretty good about this election. As far as China is concerned, China has been stealing from the United States making products under cost, subsidizing them, dumping them in the United States strategically to put strategic industries of the U.S. out of business so they could corner the market. Along with that, that was a loss of jobs because manufacturing jobs and production were going to China for cheap labor. So they have taken advantage of us for years, coupled with the fact that if you do business in China, stealing your intellectual property is like a rite of passage. This president stood up to them. He stopped that.
John, this is actually hurting people who support him. You cannot deny that. Talk to any farmer, they are hurting.
Patty, there are some pockets of farmers that can't sell their soybeans to China, but as we've seen, now they're selling them to Mexico, they're selling them to Paraguay and other countries.
There's no way they're making a market share.
There isn't, but farmers understand you've got to take a short-term hit, short-term, in order to fix the China problem. China has been taking advantage of the U.S. worker in the United States for 4 decades, Patty.
Matt, let me ask you this. Does he buckle on China if he pays a price at the polls?
You know, I can't predict what Donald Trump will ever do. I don't think anyone can.
I can.
Weirdly enough.
Yeah.
What I will say is this, and this is actually a bit of a sobering topic for progressives, Democrats. We talk to thousands of people every single week all around the country, and there are parts of this country where the president's trade agenda is starting to, it has resonated with a group of people. Now, the reality is that if you look 2 years in, he hasn't made a whole lot of substantial progress in addressing the long-term decline in wages and employment opportunities. And so now he's inflicting pain on his base in more rural communities. I'm not sure this is smart politics on his part.
Well, and here's the thing, John. If you look at the IMF forecast, the International Monetary Fund, they say that the stimulus from the tax cut, all of these fiscal policies, after 2019, it's right back to about pre-crisis levels. How do you dispute what the economists are saying is that this is a short-term sugar rush? It's as if they gave the consumers a little bit of a sugar high, and then it's going to fade, and everyone's going to crash and start crying, throwing temper tantrums.
Patty, economists around the globe have been wrong for 70 years. Now we're going to make our policy based on what the International Monetary Fund. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Look, you know, Matt, you just talk about the Trump effect. African American unemployment is the lowest it's been in recorded history, Matt. Same with Hispanic unemployment. Let's let Matt respond. Same with Asian unemployment.
We've heard that talking point.
History.
We've heard that talking point a lot. Matt, go ahead.
Do you think Donald Trump is going to get, or Republicans, or Brian Kemp, for example, in Georgia, is going to get any greater share of the African-American vote because of that factoid? Talk about paying attention to the wrong economic data point. Look here, the reality is that African-American voters, Hispanic voters in Modesto and Arizona, working-class white voters in Minnesota and Michigan, Macomb County, all are starting to see through the farce that the Republican Bill of Goods has been. They are looking for a real solution. Why are my insurance costs so high? I'm paying $1,000 a month for auto insurance in Michigan. Why is that my health care insurance costs keep going up? People are anxious, and, you know,
I know people are anxious. I don't mean to cut you off, but we have run out of time, and I can tell you people are very anxious here in the United States. We just have a couple of more hours before we're going to start to see the results. The definite sense here is people are gun-shy because so many people were so wrong about 2016. So as we get closer to knowing how this votes, we're going to see more of these conversations going on. They'll probably get a little bit more heated, and we'll be back here in the next couple of hours to bring you a little bit more of that. But for now, that's the latest from Washington.
Patty Culhane, thank you very much.